Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about Damien Williams, running back of the Kansas City Chiefs, and whether we can trust him going into the 2019 fantasy football season, or whether he might end up being a bust for us. So before we get into that, I want to go ahead and make a couple announcements. If you haven't already, as per usual, click that subscribe button, join the community. We have a lot of 2019 fantasy football content coming down the pipeline in the coming weeks, months, and as we approach the 2019 season. Also, for those of you who have already subscribed, make sure you click that notification bell. Lets you know exactly when my videos are out, when my live streams are active and stuff like that. So make sure you click that. And Tyron Smith is looking right at it, so if you don't, he might pancake you. Anyway, moving on. Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, before we talk about Damien Williams, I want to go ahead and make a couple announcements. Number one, tomorrow we will be doing a live stream, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, over here in California. So we'll do it 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, just like last week, tomorrow, Sunday. Now, the reason why we're going to do another one, obviously last week was entertaining, but another announcement I wanted to go ahead and make was that earlier this week, I was officially invited to play in Scott Fish Bowl 9 this coming season, and my goodness, that is a fantastic opportunity. It took a while. I mean, I applied for it months ago, and somehow miraculously was able to get in. If you guys aren't familiar with Scott Fish Bowl 9, it's a collective of a bunch of fantasy football people in the community that are writers and influencers that get into this tournament, and it's pretty much 1,200 teams, 1,200 different players, and it's pretty exciting. So for those of you, perhaps those of you are somehow got into the Scott Fish Bowl, or for those of you who want to come and talk fantasy strategies tomorrow, I will be doing a live stream. So a lot of it will be correlated around Scott Fish Bowl, so we're going to be doing mock drafts and such like that. So come by if you've got questions, if you want to participate in some mock drafts and have some fun. So tomorrow, 1 p.m. Anyway, so let's go ahead and let's talk about Damien Williams, shall we? Now, just like we did with Derrick Henry a couple days back, I'm going to try to just get rid of my bias, but we're going to go over the pros and we're going to go over the cons over Damien Williams' fantasy value and his approach to the 2019 season, and then I'm going to give you my verdict and my thoughts on the entire situation, okay? So let's begin with the pros as per usual. Here's the thing. There's a lot of pros, so get ready, okay? I tried to make it even, but here comes the landslide. All right, so last season, Damien Williams really saw majority of his fantasy value and his incorporation within the Kansas City Chiefs offense once Kareem Hunt was gone, right? Kareem Hunt had that off the field issue. The video came out, bada boom, they cut him, okay? From then on out, it was Spencer Ware and Damien Williams in the backfield. So in the last 7 games of Damien Williams' season, 5 being in the regular season and 2 being in the playoffs, this is what he produced. He had 82 rushing attempts for 414 rushing yards, 5.05 yards per attempt, 6 rushing touchdowns. On top of that, he had 35 targets, 30 receptions, 233 receiving yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns, all accumulating to 137.3 half-point PPR points, and that all ends up to being 19.67 fantasy points per game. So that was in the last 7 games of his season, 5 regular season, 2 in the postseason. From weeks 13 through 17 in the regular season, Damien Williams was a fantasy playoff monster. He had the 5th most points amongst all running backs in that span of 5 weeks. So he did a lot of favors for many of us, and perhaps could have won you a fantasy championship last season. So statistically, it looks good, right? The last 7 games of his season was pretty good, but I'm not doing any favors when I give you these stats. Why? Well, here's the thing. Damien Williams only had 63.6% of the offensive running back rushing attempt shares. What does that mean? Well, like I mentioned, Spencer Ware was still in that backfield. Darrell Williams still there. Charkandrick West. All of those 3 guys also had their fair share of touches in this backfield, as well as, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins had some design runs. So overall, he's still in that 7-game span, only had 63.6% of the offensive snaps. Now, a lot of those come from when he started, he won the starting job. And when did he win the starting job? After Spencer Ware was injured. in those first two games, right, in which Kareem Hunt was gone, and Damien Williams and Spencer Ware split the backfield. Spencer Ware had 70% of the rushing attempts on the team in those first 2 weeks. So, to be honest, Damien Williams really given a fair shot, yet he was able to produce fantasy-wise in those two games. On top of that, the last game of the regular season for the Kansas City Chiefs, they had blown out the Raiders 35-3. And to be honest, after the first half, Damien Williams really didn't see much work. He had 11 touches, and that was about it. And they let the backup running backs pick up the rest. So there was another game in which he really wasn't given many snaps or rushing attempts on top of it. Another experience in which Damien Williams was kind of cut short in the running game was in the AFC Championship game, in which is counted in these stats, in which after the first half, when the Kansas City Chiefs were down 14-0 to the New England Patriots, they really couldn't run the ball anymore. Right? There really wasn't an opportunity. Patrick Mahomes had to come out and he had to fire. And even though Damien Williams only had 10 rushing attempts in that AFC Championship game, he was very, very valuable in the passing game. He had 8 targets for 6 receptions, 66 total receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. So all in all, Damien Williams has been a pretty good running back, despite even being cut a little short on his opportunity throughout, the 7 games with the Kansas City Chiefs as of late. So to be honest, that's pretty good. All right. Now, let's talk about Damien Williams' kind of history. Damien Williams is going into his 6th season in the NFL. And prior to this year, at least prior to the last 7 games of his career, he really only had 2 other prior games in which he had 10-plus rushing attempts. That's right. So really with very little opportunity, Damien Williams finally was given that opportunity, stepped up, and produced. Now, you could see that as a con, and we'll talk about that in the coming minutes. But to be honest, the fact of the matter is Damien Williams really just, now that he's been given the opportunity and he's producing, it kind of gives me a little bit of confidence now that, because I always talk about opportunity leading to success, and this is one of the specific, reasons or examples of that coming into play. Let's talk about some more stats that were pretty ridiculous that popped off the screen when I was going over Damien Williams in 2018. So last season, with a minimum of 80 total rushing attempts, right? All running backs that had at least 80 rushing attempts, including the playoff statistics, Damien Williams, on 31% of his rushing attempts, either led to a first down or a touchdown, which was ranked number one in the NFL when you included the playoffs, which is pretty ridiculous. Obviously, this is only for a running back that minimum 80 rushing attempts, so he wasn't really given much fair share there. But then again, when he was given the ball, he was either getting first downs or touchdowns. Pretty big deal. On top of that, fantasy points per touch. Last season, Damien Williams, in that 7-game span, had 1.22 fantasy points per touch. So every time he touched the ball, he scored 1.22 fantasy points on average. Pretty ridiculous, right? On top of that, some pretty big stats that I was looking into. A lot of it had to do with the Kansas City Chiefs offense. I know many of us may be thinking, is Damien Williams just a product of the system? Well, we'll go over that, but to be honest, when you're in a Patrick Mahomes-led offense, you are in, one of the, or if not the highest scoring offense, which they were last season. The Rams are up there still, but when you're in the most dynamic offense in the NFL, when you're scoring so many fantasy points, scoring so many points and blowing teams out, right? You're going to score points. The running back, the wide receivers, the tight ends, the quarterback, they're all going to score a bunch of points. Now, what is so special about the Kansas City Chiefs? As of late, the thing that has stayed consistent, right? I know Patrick Mahomes has come and gone, but the thing that has stayed consistent is Andy Reid. And let's talk about Andy Reid and what he has produced as an offensive mind and the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs and as a head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles in seasons prior. When I looked at these stats, in 12 of the last 15 seasons, Andy Reid's offense has produced a top 10 running back, top 10 running back in half-point PPR in 12 out of the last 15 seasons. In full PPR, he's made 12 top 8 running backs. Pretty ridiculous, right? So with Kareem Hunt in the last couple seasons, with Jamal Charles, with LaShawn McCoy, with Brian Westbrooks, Andy Reid has always had a running back that has just been on top of the league, torching teams. And that's exactly what Damien Williams turned into once he was given the opportunity, right? So if he stays the starting running back, which all signs point towards Damien Williams maintaining that spot, why not? Why can't we see Damien Williams be a top 10 running back in fantasy come 2019, right? So I always say right. I don't know, like I'm talking. I am technically talking to you. So another statistic. So besides, the depth of the skilled position, the quarterback, the tight ends, the wide receivers, the offensive line makes a big difference when it comes to running backs. Last season, the Kansas City Chiefs had the 13th best offense according to Pro Football Focus and their end-of-year metrics through the 17th season. So again, not a bad offensive line. If they were, any worse, there might be an issue. But to be honest, being in the top, half of the league, they've done pretty well for themselves. So I think all signs point towards a pretty good season here. So those are the pros. Those are the statistics that I wanted to point out for Damien Williams on the pro side. Now let's talk about the cons specifically, shall we? All right. So here are the cons. I mentioned a couple of them just a couple minutes ago, and a lot of it is going to have to do with Damien Williams' experience in the NFL. Damien Williams is going into his 6th year in the NFL. He spent his first 4 seasons as a member of the Miami Dolphins, in which he really did nothing. His primary use, a part of the Miami Dolphins in those 4 seasons, was literally just being a receiving back, but he wasn't really given much opportunity in that either. He had a couple games in which, he was used, 6 targets, 6 receptions, but really nothing major. At the end of every season, he had about 250 receiving yards, 1 or 2 receiving touchdowns, very little use in the running game. Because in the last couple years, if we remember what the Miami Dolphins have had in their backfield, Kenyon Drake's, J.H.I.'s, that kind of a breakdown in the last couple seasons. So really, there wasn't much opportunity for Damien Williams, who was really the RB3 when he was there, to get much opportunity. So to be honest, now that he was kind of moved into this Kansas City Chiefs offense, he wasn't really even a top running back here. He was also a 3rd-string running back with the Kansas City Chiefs. He sat behind Kareem Hunt, he sat behind Spencer Ware, and it was only until both of them were gone that he was given the opportunity that really kind of bolstered him up. So the question is Damien Williams just a facade? Is he just a product of the system? Are we drafting a guy that really isn't as talented as he portrays himself to be? Because we don't want to get tricked. We don't want to have to grab a guy that is going to end up just being a flub and getting replaced after a couple weeks if we're going to use a 3rd round selection on him potentially. Because as of right now, as the fantasy landscape sits, if you mess up on one of your first 3 picks, it's not going to kill your season, but it's going to make it extremely difficult for you to turn it around. Yes, there are going to be waiver wire acquisitions that you can make to go ahead and mitigate that specific issue, but on top of it, if you mess up on those first 3 picks, it's going to make your season that much harder. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make every single pick in our drafts efficient and effective so that we can have the best possible team, so we can capture some fantasy championships in 2019, right? So let's talk some more stats on the con side. Here's the thing. Obviously, he hasn't proved himself. When we talk about Derrick Henry a couple days ago, Derrick Henry's had more NFL experience than Damien Williams. Yet, why do I trust Derrick Henry less, perhaps? Why would I do that? Well, it's because of this specific offense and how it's been created. Let me give you some background on that. When I was looking at Kareem Hunt last season, Kareem Hunt was ridiculous. Kareem Hunt had a buttload of stats in the only 11 games that he played. But what was the special thing? Because this offense throws the ball so effectively and so often, defenders cannot stack the box. So Kareem Hunt last season only faced 8+ defenders in the box 15.47% of the time. So what does that mean? When Kareem Hunt's given the ball, he's at the advantage. If you've got 5 offensive linemen there and they can just go ahead and block, it only gives, Kareem Hunt just has to get past one guy, and he's capable of doing that. And that's what I pretty much saw Damien Williams, Spencer Ware go through as well as the season progressed when Kareem Hunt was gone. They could not stack the box. Defenders would not, because they didn't want to potentially get screwed over by the play action and then Patrick Mahomes is throwing over you and you're getting torched. Another con that goes towards Damien Williams, the emergence, or actually the acquisitions of Carlos Hyde and Darwin Thompson. So Carlos Hyde in the last couple of years, last season he played for 2 different teams, played for the Cleveland Browns. Once he was with the Cleveland Browns, wasn't a bad running back. Statistically, he was pretty good. When he went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, though, he completely fell off. Couldn't even outplay TJ Yeldon for many snaps. Leonard Fournette came back, and he just was relegated to the 3rd string running back of that team. But if we remember, a couple seasons back with the 49ers, the guy was a top 10 running back. He's still capable of doing that, I'm sure of, if he's given the opportunity in a good offense. This is that kind of an offense that really could help Carlos Hyde get back to his spot. But is that the kind of running back he is? Is that why they brought him into the organization? Also, Darwin Thompson out of Utah State, if I'm not mistaken, rookie running back, a guy that is a 3rd down back, exclusively kind of probably early on in his career. He's going to be that. He's going to be that change of pace back that can be used for this offense that'll help Patrick Mahomes. Is that going to hurt potentially Damien Williams' receiving stats and his opportunity there? Those are the cons. So let's get to our final statements here. Let's get to our verdict. Okay, when we're talking about Damien Williams, we still have to take into account what the running backs of the Kansas City Chiefs have done, specifically last year. I mentioned Kareem Hunt a lot in this video because Kareem Hunt kind of is a baseline. I understand Kareem Hunt obviously has more talent, raw talent, than Damien Williams, but perhaps the talent isn't as valuable as the opportunity. Like with, Derrick Henry. Sure, he's a talented running back, but he's not given the opportunity to be that next level, right? So Kareem Hunt last season in his 11 games averaged 19.7 fantasy points, which comparatively to Damien Williams in his 7 games, 19.67 fantasy points, is literally right on track. Literally almost identical, okay? Now, Kareem Hunt last season, what was he able to do? He had 14 touchdowns, 207 touches for a total of 1,202 total yards in his 11 weeks. Imagine that. But then I kind of took the next step forward. I wanted to see how productive the running backs of the Kansas City Chiefs were last year. Between Kareem Hunt, Spencer Ware, and Damien Williams, all 3 of them combined fantasy points, they all produced a combined 373.3 fantasy points. Just imagine, there is that much production out of the backfield in Kansas City. 373 fantasy points. Sure, Damien Williams by himself can't get all of those stats. It's impossible. But if he can get majority of them, I mean, goodness, there's a potential for Damien Williams to, I'm not even kidding, 290 fantasy points, that's not out of the realm of possibility. Again, scored 10 touchdowns in 7 weeks. As a part of this offense, this Kansas City offense that, my goodness, is just, it's dominating the fantasy landscape, to be honest. I have a lot of excitement and optimism for Damien Williams going into the 2019 season. I personally think that the pros outweigh the cons. Sure, Carlos Hyde and Darwin Thompson can sit behind him, right? But that's the point. They're sitting behind him. There's a reason the Kansas City Chiefs upped his contract, extended Damien Williams for an extra 2 seasons. It's because they want to use him within this offense. They even found him more and more, reliable as the season progressed. In the first round of the playoffs last year, he had 25 rushing attempts, the most he had seen in his career by literally almost 2 times. Why? Because they trusted him and he was producing on the opportunity. Whether it's in the passing game, whether it's in the running game, Damien Williams is a capable running back. And I personally think sitting at his ADP of running back 13 as of right now, which pretty much brings him off the board late 2nd, early 3rd, Damien Williams is a reliable running back. Within this offense, there's no way that he doesn't produce. And as of right now, all signs point to Damien Williams being the starting running back of the Kansas City Chiefs. There's no signs of Carlos Hyde. Obviously, we have yet to approach, training camp. It is yet to officially start. But as of right now, as it sits today, Damien Williams is the RB1 of this team, and I believe he's going to end up as an RB1 in fantasy come the end of the 2019 season, and that's my opinion. that's pretty much it. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you like this video, click that like button. Make sure that if you guys are home and available to watch, we have a live stream tomorrow, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Come, hang out, ask questions, participate in some mock drafts. Let's have some fun. So until tomorrow, hopefully you'll show up. I'll see you guys then. And thank you and have a good one. See you guys.